Hey, Kim.
Hi, guys.
Should we have people introduce themselves as they join? Renee, you just joined, so you get the lucky honor of introducing yourself and telling us your spirit animal.
Oh, wow.
Well, okay. Renee Fry, CEO of Gentrio. You all need a will. You need healthcare proxies. You need to be able to have your family find them. So, spirit animal, I'm going to be my dog Butter because she is the best cared for, best spoiled dog ever. And she knows 100 tricks and she's amazing.
Nice. Chris, you want to go next? So then we can ask Mr. Mike Fordyce or someone else to volunteer.
Yeah. Spirit animal. I'm gonna go with the Canadian grizzly.
Nice. Meryl, who are you and what's your spirit animal?
Okay. I run community investor relations at Breakaway. My spirit animal is a bald eagle.
Nice. Why?
Very powerful.
Yeah, powerful, majestic. I like it. Mr. Harrison?
Nick Harrison, associate at Breakaway, and I will go with the Canada Goose. Been seeing lots of them recently.
Beautiful.
Oh, that's a good one, Nick.
Much loved and hated.
I'm going to go before Mr. Emery because otherwise he's going to steal my spirit animal. So I am Luis Alberto Robles Padilla, one of the partners here at Breakaway. And my spirit animal is the hungry Mexican wolf.
I'm picturing a Duran Duran song in my head right now.
Yeah.
Who's Duran Duran?
Exactly why I was picturing it.
You want to go, Mr. Emery?
I'm DeWolf Emery, CEO of Trove Foods, and I'm going to go with the Timberwolf, Luis.
Wrong.
Who's Lobo and who's Lobito is up for grabs.
Indeed. Kim, you want to go next? You've been on long enough that you kind of know what's going on.
All right. Yes, Kim Fennell. I guess I should say ex-Uber. So you can blame all your bad Uber rides on me, and now angel investor. And I'll spirit animal crap. I don't know. I'll stay with wolf. I'll go with the gray wolf. It goes with my hair. How's that?
Wow, we got some serious wolf packing going on here. I like it. How about you, Mr. Ulloa?
Someone CEO of Listo, and I would have to go with the stallion. I'm a big fan and lover of horses, actually. So I think they're fast, they're nimble, free-spirited.
Love it. Mr. Rawlinson, I'm looking at you. I think if you can hear me.
I'm the guy that is here to tell you all to wear a mask. So my animal would
Dr.
be
Adrian Rawlinson, folks. And the spirit animal?
My to be my Weimar dog, who's he's an awesome boy, athletic, and keeps us occupied. He's a good guy.
Excellent. Sean, you wanna take the next one?
Sure. I'm Sean, one of the guys behind Signal Wire. Not really religious, however.
Okay. I respect that. We welcome all religions in this group, and including zero religions. Mr. Masterman, we're doing a quick introduction and then your spirit animal.
All right, quick introduction. I'm not the only Canadian living in America in the crew. I come from the French Canadian side, living in New York City, and former engineer, product guy turned VC. And then spirit animal. Well, if you'll allow me a little bit of leeway of not choosing an animal, because I did a similar exercise recently. I think we talked about it. I guess my logo could be an F1 car, because it can go really, really fast when it needs to.
Whoa!
But
wait, you just went from spirit animal to spirit vehicle. I'm gonna allow you to expand the metaphor from spirit animal to spirit vehicle. Mr. Michael from Career List, you want to go next? He's having audio issues.
No, I'm off mute. I don't know what spirit animal anymore. You know, I feel like I'm like a Yorkshire Terrier probably at this point. Everyone loves the Yorkie and just kind of hang out in the couch.
Yeah.
Like to lay on warm bricks, and it seems like a good animal to go with.
Should we go with Mr. Linton next? Mr. Linton, I've heard fantastic things about you from multiple people, but I've never met you before, and I hope to one day see your face.
Bruce had his video on at one point.
Okay. Kale, you want to go next?
Sure. Yeah.
Quick
Hi, I'm Kale.
Vehicle.
And I've known Chris for a while. Different companies they've invested in, and currently doing stuff around cybersecurity. And my spirit animal, I would have to go with the pig, because as my mother says, Hawaiians are built for comfort, not speed.
So to be clear, are we going with like, is this a feral pig or one of those pigs that like swims in the ocean?
Well, yeah, maybe with some rum, it could be feral, but normally it's pretty good, pretty easy going.
So like Charlotte's Web kind of pig.
I don't know about that.
Mr. Fordyce, I'm looking at you here, and
so Mike Fordyce. Yeah. So Mike Fordyce, CEO of Ninth Decimal. And my spirit animal is a buffalo.
Nice.
Always been fascinated by buffalo. Very resilient, hardy animals, live through the winter. So that is my spirit animal.
And they make a great burger.
They do make a great burger. That is true. And a nice coat.
Tony Minutala, you want to go? A quick introduction and then spirit animal. Just icebreaker here.
That's a bad one. I don't have one. So yeah,
How about
I'm
the
Anthony,
Milwaukee
I'm
Rock?
CEO of SignalWire, creator of this technology. And I don't know. I have to write a program to pick an animal for me because I don't know.
Okay. And Mr. Starr, I've also heard wonderful things about you. I think I've met you actually in the Ninth Decimal office.
Stoss.
So yeah, David Stoss,
I need glasses.
president of Ninth Decimal. Spirit animal. I've never really thought of my spirit animal, but if I had to pick one, it would be probably like a dolphin. I love the water. I love swimming. It's my favorite form of workout. Just when I'm at the beach with the kids or whatever. I mean, I just love being in the water, and I think dolphins seem to have the most fun with it. So yeah, I would go with the dolphin.
Love it. Well, I'm excited to see the number of people on the screen because these are the most people I've seen in Cantina at any given moment. We will be passing around the tequila shortly for those of you that are joining late. Mr. Evan McGee, if you could introduce yourself and your spirit animal, that would be super.
Yeah, you bet. I'm the CTO and one of the co-founders over here at SignalWire. And my spirit animal, gosh, it would just be a penguin. I've always loved penguins. I used to collect penguins when I was a kid. I find they are both adorable, but formidable, and they're sort of little secret little missiles, right? They can't fly, but they get underwater, and they're one of the most hydrodynamic animals in the world. So
beautiful,
love the little guys.
And you can tap dance like no other.
Yeah, you bet.
Christina, thank you for joining. Ladies first here. A quick introduction and your spirit animal. Oh. We have audio issues with Cantina. Can the CTO of Cantina help troubleshoot her audio issues real quick, please?
You appear to have audio issues. Oh, there we go. You fixed it. Well, you had it fixed there for a second. If you can't see the little wavy lines, like right above here where I'm pointing, then that means the actual device is not capturing it.
Mr. Austin, while we're waiting for Señorita Cajajova to fix her audio issues, can we do a quick introduction and your spirit animal?
I guess I missed the memo about spirit animal. I'm sitting up here with two grandkids, and all they run around with is little my spirit animal.
Love it. Christina, one more try here. If we can't get you, I think we're going to get started. I'm going to hand it back to my partner, Mr. Chris Albinson, and we'll get your spirit animal soon. Okay, back to you, Chris.
All right. So welcome to the halfway point in probably the worst year that we've all ever experienced. So Anno Horribilus. We thought that coming up on June, the middle of the year, was worth having a conversation about what we're all facing, what's in front of us. And so the things that we're going to talk about today are a little bit of a step back on where we are in COVID. So we're going to give Adrian a little bit extra time to kind of give us a medical update and sort of the economic side of that. And then open up the conversation about how are you doing on, executing on your worst case, most likely scenario that we're all trying to navigate with a lot of variability. Michael's going to kick it off from Corylus, but we're going to talk about, how we're doing with our business too at Breakaway and how we're thinking about things. And then at the end, would love for you guys to hear a little bit from Tony and Sean and Evan at SignalWire. They, for all of us that are sick of Zoom, bored of Zoom, frustrated with Zoom, they've sprinted and created a really cool product called Cantina, where you're encouraged to drink tequila while you talk to your friends. And so we'll hear a little bit about what they're working on and where they're going. And as most of you know, SignalWire is a portfolio company here at Breakaway. So with that, my daughter and I watched Back to the Future. For those of us that still remember that movie, this is not the year that we thought we were going to have 7 months ago. Unfortunately, we're a little over 9.6 million global cases. Red is bad if you haven't seen this from Johns Hopkins. And unfortunately, the United States is 25% of both the cases and the deaths. So we're facing it even more so than everyone else. I think most of you guys realize that. On the positive side, this is Nick, the associate, delivering food to the hospital workers in Ottawa. Red Mass Ride, for those not familiar, was a nonprofit vision and mission started by our own Michael Sissions on the call today to give back and support frontline workers. And so just to give you a sense, we now have 10 companies involved in this project: Careerlist, Harper Wild, Even Prime, Ninth Decimal, Senso, ourselves, Love Pop, Boston Beer, and Easy Cater came on last week for Father's Day, which was very cool and appreciated, and Gentreo. And we've delivered a little over 37 care packages to 21 different hospitals. Cards, support, food. Just been a really fun thing to be involved in, and I just want to kind of recognize all the effort for everyone who pulled that together to make it happen last week for Father's Day. And if anyone's interested in joining the little cabal, circle up with me afterwards, and we'll see if we can get you roped in. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Adrian just to talk about, I think most of us are sadly familiar with the first half data of COVID, but kind of looking forward as to what may be in front of us in the second half. And Adrian said he has some questions, but he doesn't have the answers. And I think that's very apropos to sort of what we're facing. So with that, I'll hand it over to Adrian.
Great, thanks a lot, Chris. Thanks to all the Red Mask guys as well for those remarkable efforts. Really appreciate all your time and effort in that project. This is a terrible time for all of us. It's an awful time for medical workers and for the public. This reminds me actually of when I was in training. What we're going through now is probably the biggest sort of human experiment that we've ever experienced, certainly in my lifetime, and it reminds me somewhat of the HIV situation several years ago. I remember when I was in training, I worked in an infectious diseases hospital, and I remember admitting this guy from an African country. Can't remember which country it was now, but he ended up being the first, what we used to call HTLV3, and which was later renamed HIV, he was the first HIV patient in the UK. And I remember admitting this guy and trying to figure out what was wrong with him. And then the whole HIV epidemic blew up. So now we have, SARS-CoV-2, which is kind of, affecting obviously a lot more people. The CDC recently came out with this statement yesterday, 20 million affected with SARS-CoV-2, 10 times as many as confirmed cases. So we now know that, certainly asymptomatic carriers is a real issue. Asymptomatic people shed the virus probably at the same rate as people who are symptomatic. The big question that everybody's asking right now is, is there a second wave coming, or are we still dealing with this first wave? Well, it appears as though, the nature of this epidemic, in my view, is several waves. I can see, 2, 3, 4 waves at least. It has this up and down, escalating, de-escalating consequences in a population. We have seen some people reopening, but now they're scaling back. Florida just announced this morning that all the bars are going to be shut again. And interestingly, we just sent out $1.4 billion in stimulus checks to dead people. So it shows you the organizational capacity of the government here that a lot of people are putting under scrutiny right now. New York seems to be easing some restrictions, but there is this massive concern that cases are on the increase, particularly in California, Texas, and Arizona. So what I thought I'd do is just, pose a few questions, and please feel free to chime in if you have any, words of wisdom here. I don't profess to be the expert in this arena. I'm certainly not an economist. I'm a physician first, and I've kind of learned that, some of these issues are not just medical or economic, they're financial, they are, work-related, etc. So, how will this, if there is a second wave, how will it be different to the first wave? Well, I think that, we're learning a lot about contact tracing. We're learning how to hone in on hotspots and control multiple mini outbreaks. I think that'll be the wave in the next 6 months, is to put out these multiple fires that keep popping up. It's difficult to say whether governments across the world will have the balls, if you like, to do another full lockdown. From an economic standpoint, it doesn't seem like it's the best way to go. Maybe we should concentrate on other ways to contain the virus, and I'll talk about some of the possible ways to do that later on in the slides. It looks like, from the point of view of herd immunity, we need at least 70% of people in the country, in the US, to have actually had the virus, so we get herd immunity, which is a massive number of people, obviously. And as I say, I think we will see further waves. This will be an up and down thing for the next 6 months. From a medical perspective, there is a phenomenal amount of work going on internationally around vaccines, around different PPE measures, different materials, different ways of sanitizing equipment. You probably don't hear a lot about this in the mainstream media, but from a medical viewpoint, when I follow some of the medical literature and some of the studies that are coming out and some of the research, it's pretty amazing how people are getting together on an international basis to try and figure out this issue and to come up with some solutions. Obviously, this group is you're all sort of leaders in your own categories, in your own industries, and the whole impact of COVID as regards the democratic process and the way countries are being run is a big issue. Apparently the president of Hungary just kind of passed a law which basically gives him the right to function as a dictator. So some of these countries are actually, using this as in not so pleasant ways to, pressurize their populations. They say that they're monitoring people to prevent the disease when they're surveilling people for other reasons. So there are some bad actors out there. And obviously the biggest question is, what do we do with the election in November, the biggest election that we're probably facing in our lifetime? How is that going to be run? I don't see a lot of discussion around that, on how we are preparing for an election where there could be a second or third wave in November. What are we doing to prepare around that? It's kind of worrying that we're not really hearing much about that. And then, people tend to forget that viruses come and go, and certainly there's absolutely no reason why why we shouldn't fear another virus. I hate to be, doomsday, scenario person here, but it's certainly possible that we could have other strains, other different viruses come up. We need to learn from COVID-19 and how to jump all over these as soon as they occur. So a lot of work in the medical world is actually looking at this to figure out the surveillance mechanism on a national and an international basis to try and get ahead of these epidemics from a government level down to the individual practitioner level. Next slide. From the economic perspective, we've seen the stock market, do pretty well in the last couple of months, surprisingly. Obviously, stock markets are very forward-thinking, very look to the future a lot of the time. But it's hard to think, that there isn't going to be a downturn. Should we have a second wave? Who knows what will happen? I will leave you guys. You're smarter than me in this respect. You understand the markets probably better than I do. So. That's a discussion that we need to start having from an economic standpoint. Are there any positive effects of this pandemic? Well, in the last 6 months, certainly from my perspective, we've seen a shift in the way medical care is delivered. The advent, if anything good at all comes out of COVID as regards the medical community, it's really the birth of telemedicine and remote care. So we've seen huge inroads in that area. And I suspect that after this is all said and done, that will become part of mainstream medical care. We're going to see these hybrid models of going to see your doc in a bricks and mortar facility, but also a lot of remote care. From the point of view of non-medical stuff, obviously, the way we work, the way we travel, all these things are going to change probably forever. Companies are looking at going 100% remote. My previous company, HIMS, just came out and said that they're now a 100% remote company, and I think more will follow suit. As I alluded to before, the aspect of a lockdown is a very delicate, very complex discussion. It would appear that a lot of countries are thinking that a full-blown lockdown may not be the best solution here. So people are looking at things like immunity passport is one thing that's been put together, whereby you get a test, and if you're immune or you've had the virus, you get a passport to travel. There are some issues around that, in that people may seek out the virus to get infected, a bit like the chickenpox days when you took your kids to chickenpox parties to get the virus. People will go so far as probably trying to get the virus so they get a passport. Plus, there's an issue around fraud and forgery. It's a complex area. The UK is now seriously looking at this passport immunity concept, if you like. And the other thing that's being looked at is this pooling of, you may have seen this in the press today, Fauci was talking about this. And when someone like Fauci stands up and says, what we're doing is not working, he's absolutely correct. And, it's unfortunate that we don't hear from the likes of him more, because I think, he's obviously realizing now that what we're doing is not great. It's not had a massive effect, and we need to start changing our approach here, certainly over the next 6 months. So next slide. So some of the ideas that I kind of put down from my research and from a medical perspective, that there is there are some things that we can certainly clean up. We can do better. We've learned a lot in the last 4 or 5 months. Certainly better reporting capabilities across the US in particular, more specific reporting, and having people scrutinize the data that is reported. Some states are still reporting erroneous data. They're reporting low rates of infection when it's actually quite high in order to sort of protect their own economy and their own turf, if you like. So a lot of that stuff is still going on. We need to understand the epidemiology of this disease in a lot more detail. History tells us that the Spanish flu was like 4 waves. The second wave killed about 50 million people. So it would appear at this stage that this is a multi-wave situation. That's kind of how the medical community are thinking about this right now, this series of spikes, if you like, both locally, nationally, and globally. The whole concept of contact tracing, I think, is incredibly important. We need to figure out, who's spreading the virus, what's the asymptomatic spread versus the symptomatic spread, where are these hotspots, how can we jump on these hotspots sooner rather than later. That I think is going to be the strategy moving forward, rather than the sort of blanket lockdown policy that we've been through in the last 2 or 3 months. We can't have this discussion without mentioning the role of sort of federal versus the state mismatch in information and regulations. I mean, just to give you an example, the whole issue of mask wearing is completely random across the board. Whether you mandate it, whether you make it just certain occupations, whether you certain areas. We have to come to some national recommendation about the wearing of masks, whether it be mandated 100% across the board or whatever it is. There's a gross mismatch here in misinformation state to state, and compounding that is certainly the politicizing of all these public health messages. We have senior administration officials standing up without masks saying that we're on top of this and that things are all rosy and we're going to come out of this and everybody's opening up, the economy's doing great and the jobs numbers look great. And then you flip the page to your other news organization and we see 7,000 cases in Florida yesterday, or 5,000 in California, whatever it was. So there's a lot of mixed messaging that's happening, and that mixed messaging is leading to some bad behaviors and some rampant spread of the virus because of these mixed messages. So it needs to come from the top, and it needs to be better messaging. It needs to be more concise messaging. And we need to start, to get a grip on this from a national perspective, rather than let the states do their own thing. That would be my view. So I think, is there another slide?
No, that's it.
Okay.
That's it, Adrian. I can maybe.
That's kind of my 2 cents. And if you want to, you guys want to jump in, and I'm happy. Like I say, I'm not the expert here. This is just what I've gleaned from my talking to docs and following the sort of medical community.
And given sort of the interweaving of the public health and the economics, I'm going to jump through a couple other slides quickly in the next 5 minutes, and then open it up to a dialogue. Try to see if, not that anyone has an answer to these questions, but we do have a point of view. So given that we're at the halfway point of the year, just kind of stepping back, again, we're 47 million unemployed, another 1.5 million last week, 124,000 COVID deaths in the US. Most of these numbers you guys know. I'm going to get to the GDP numbers and the US debt numbers, because I think it also plays into this, and to Adrian's point, and yet new home sales were up 16% month over month. New home sales were up 12% year over year. Median home prices were up. Dear white people, which warrants mention. Viewing on Netflix was up 428%. There's a lot of conversation on the topic of social injustice and sort of the economic, tension that's in the country as well. And to Adrian's point, the Dow until 2 days ago was when I did the first draft of this deck was, up around 26,000, so 91% of its value from December 31st, despite all of these things. What does that look like? One of the things I just said, shout out to Ninth Decimal and David Stoss, who's on, who took you through the Economic Mobility Index. So the United States is back at about 91% of its pre-COVID mobility index, and you can see things like home improvement are at 140%. Really, everything but movie theaters, has made a pretty strong comeback, including casual dining. If you look at it on a county by county basis, it gets really scary, and rightfully so. And one of the things that we want to do is how do you calibrate on that risk, both personally and from a company point of view. So the most thoughtful, most recent work that I wanted to share with you, and I'm just going to do it in quick summary, is some work that I saw from Dr. Scott Gottlieb. He was a commissioner at the FDA, serves on the board of Pfizer, and also at the American Enterprise Institute, and also works over at NEA. So alluding to some of the things that Adrian was talking about, we do think, or he does believe, that the rise in cases in LA are going to be different than what we saw in New York, in part because most of the issues are community spread, not spread within the hospital. So that the healthcare communities figure out how to deal with this disease, although the broader community has not. We're also probably going to see a lower mortality rate than we saw before, because we are testing more and seeing more of the cases. But that doesn't mean that it goes away. The main thing I wanted to share with you is sort of his assessment, which is that it's a 30% probability as we sit here today. If you look at the sort of main risk drivers, that the second wave will be worse. And by second wave, because the virus doesn't really think of as first or second wave, but the next big hit is likely to be worse this fall than the first wave we went through earlier this year. 70% probability that it's not as bad, but just to try to calibrate on that. The major drivers of that, and you guys have the deck, so I'm not going to go through all these points, are, I think, pretty self-evident. I think, one of the bigger ones are at the bottom, just to put a point on it, which is, there will likely be some immunity, but that immunity is not necessarily certain either in duration or in the variants of the viruses. So, different COVID viruses, as Adrian pointed out, or mutations of this virus. And, the best view seems to think that you have partial immunity for about 12 months. The other one that's a bit of a gut punch is no vaccine until early 2021 at the earliest. And probably for those of us that are not in risk categories, you wouldn't be able to get it till late 2021. So what does that mean from an economic point of view? So if you think about that as a 30% probability that the second wave is worse, I'll get to some of the key data and not read all these slides. But we're facing a situation that, unfortunately, the second half of this year doesn't look much better than the first half, is the net of it. So if you look at it on this basis, and this comes from Goldman's research, Q2, the quarter that we're in, is really the one that looks to be the ugliest. I'm not so sure that I believe this, to be clear. Not the Q2 numbers. I do believe the Q1, Q2 numbers. I'm not sure that we're going to see a Q3 with this degree of bounce back. And actually, my point of view is we will not.
There's no way that's right.
Yeah, I agree. Goldman definitely wants their customers to stay invested in the stock market. So I'll state that out with but I do think the fourth quarter number, of an 8% increase, could be possible depending on how things go. But I do think the third quarter is going to be pretty rough and probably look more like Q2 than what they're forecasting. But that's really be critical to the stock market question. No matter how you look at it, given that background data, the markets are overvalued. which is that light blue, even on a historic basis, the trading above, historic PE, that's a good thing from a markets and a liquidity point of view, potentially. But if, as we can see in the last 2 days, it's very susceptible to very quick changes. One of the other things that I think has been net positive for us as a community, as a firm, as a fund, is ironically, tech has actually been a net beneficiary by and large. So both Infotech and the FANG, way outperformed the S&P. And as Adrian talked about in terms of telemedicine and other trends, we think they actually accelerate the digitization and leveraging of tech in broader parts of the economy than we've seen before faster, and that's a net good thing for us. Also, if you look at economic cycles, we're still early in this one, I guess, is the main point, I would say, and usually you're going to see about a 2x pop back on the broader economy from the bottom of the recession to the top. This is obviously a very different situation than we've ever faced in our lifetime, any of us. So hard to calibrate, but I do believe, just like Luis's investment in MongoDB and mine in Pinterest and DocuSign, some of the best and most interesting companies will come out of this cycle, and the ones that are able to persevere and get through. So I'm throwing a lot of data at you, both on the economic side, but the main takeaway for us is when we were counseling you back in November of last year to have 18 months of cash. We're banging the table really hard. Find your way to 18 months of cash, because we don't think the second half is going to be much better than the first half, and that means financing and business headwinds, by and large, are still going to be a big issue for all of us through the balance of 2020. So with that, I'm going to pause. I've been talking too much, but I did want to get you guys that info before opening up. And Michael, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about how Careerless is adapting, and some of the things you guys are thinking about. I'm happy to do that in terms of Breakaway and what we're up to as well, and how we're thinking about things.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear me or not.
Yep.
Yeah, I think we, Q2 looks very similar to that Goldman chart. In terms of where we netted, we're probably finished 7 quarters of growth and probably net 50 down for the quarter, but managed to stay pretty close to break even because of the hard changes we made, early on. For us, our bet is kind of Q2 is the low point, and that has less to do with the economy as it does to do just with our sales efforts starting to pay off. In terms of like reprioritizing where we were spending time for the back half of the year, in terms of rebuilding our pipeline and around what's likely to be there. So we see our build out starting in Q3 across multiple customers, multiple companies. Generally speaking, we see mass geographic diversity. So New York taking seriously, other markets not. We had people land in the St. Louis airport today, and no one's wearing masks. It's total. The airport was rammed comparatively to New York, which was super quiet, and everybody was wearing masks this morning. Our clients in New York have started to open their office. Anybody who's opened in New York today, their teams are not happy about it, and kind of talent's going through a period of reevaluation. We're seeing an overall theme of mass talent reevaluation in the market. Where to live, what to do, how to work. Is definitely there's an uneasiness that's reclassifying, what people want to do. And I think, personally, my focus has been on looking at, opportunities for Careerless, looking at opportunities outside Careerless, looking at, how to get family and work life structured for what's likely to be, a relatively significant, time period here. But I think we are going to see a lot of pain as Q2 earnings come out and people really realize what's happened. I don't think we've seen the layoffs yet from the big companies that, kind of had the political will of the market to not do anything in now. And I think it's going to be, challenging through the end of next year for a lot of companies because, unless you're in the video platform or you're in one of the core jet streams of the market, most companies are taking a relatively conservative view towards the back half of the year, but ultimately starting to roll out their 2021 plans, which are ultimately relatively conservative. So we're still within the range of worst case than where we set out. I think we're slightly better than our worst case, for the 6-month window that we were projecting. And our internal guidance around it being a gradual build out likely through Q4 of next year for the general talent business and for a lot of industries is still where we're focused.
Hey Sam, do you want to jump in and talk about how Listo's thinking about this, or if anybody's got a point of view that's different? Also love to hear that too.
Yeah, no, it's very similar, Chris, and this is very helpful because I think we're all trying to figure out and forecast what the second half will look like, and even 2021. But for us, we've been making the best of this. Similarly, we've done really well in reducing our costs, trying to really focus on getting to that break-even point so that we become as resilient as possible once we're profitable, right? But at the same time, playing a lot on the offensive and doing a lot of R&D and figuring out how we could develop a product that solves pain points in this time. And more importantly, as new consumer shifts take over, I'll give you an example of that. We recently doubled down on life insurance, right? Optimize our product offering based on all the learnings that we had post-COVID. And the timing for that product is excellent, and the market's responding very well to it. So we're starting to focus more resources on that, and driving revenue and providing access to a product that has traditionally not been accessible to the underserved market. And we're very pumped up about that. We're also starting to stay relevant and helping our community in time of need, with unemployment being a record high, as you articulated here. Next week, in fact, we're launching a program whereby we help our community get access to jobs in the courier space. There's an increasing demand for, delivering goods and services to people's homes through Grubhub and a lot of these platforms. So we're financing electric bicycles, and helping our customers get revenue doing those sort of courier services as well. So we're being very thoughtful, trying to build a good brand and staying true to our mission, and at the same time, playing on the offensive side as much as possible and learning how to work from home, as you guys thought. Blessed for the most part. I think we're sitting in a good position to come out of this stronger, given our focus on new initiatives as well.
Thanks, man. I appreciate the transparency. It's important to have the honest conversations. Renee or Mike Fordyce, you guys want to jump in? Sort of how you guys are managing?
Yeah. So one of the things. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Renee. Go first.
One of the things we just did is we just did a partnership with eNotarize, or eNotary Log. So some of the things from a government perspective, from us for doing like the wills, the healthcare proxies and things, with no one being able to leave home, it helped our business, but with the ability now to make them legal. So 26 states passed laws due to COVID around making things now that you can do everything online. And so what we've been doing now is using some of our political connections and other things, is making sure those laws stay in place, or at least stay in place longer, and then implement this partnership now for Dentrios, where you can just hit buttons, it leaves us, gets notarized, and comes back to us. And so taking advantage of some of the legal changes that we hope will stick.
And Renee's one of those privileged folks that are in a jet stream of COVID. So hoping those jet stream wins stay behind you. Mike, you want to jump in?
Yeah. So on our side, just from a cost standpoint, we're taking out about $2 million of costs a quarter, and that was not easy to do with pay cuts. We did 25% pay cuts. We did a little unusual. We did the federal work share program, where people can kind of subsidize those pay cuts through the federal government. And so in some instances, if you are a lower wage worker, you will actually probably make more money than you do from 9 decibel. So that kind of helps offset. The things like not renewing our office lease, which is pretty sad. Our office lease was up in the month of June. We're not going to renew. We just moved out of it. Just didn't make sense to go renew for another 3 years, obviously. We've been in that space. As Chris knows, we've been in that space for 12 years, and it was home to us. It was a well-worn place, and so it was kind of sad to let that go. On the revenue side, we are seeing an uptick in Q3. So we saw a low point in Q2, and we've already surpassed Q2 revenue in Q3, kind of booked and scheduled. We're seeing demand in CPG. Stop and Shop Grocery is a huge client of ours, and so we're seeing a nice uptick from that standpoint in Q3. So that gives us some hope. And thanks to my partner David Stoss on developing the EMI and the recovery playbook, has kept us in the game with our clients during Q2. So when they're ready to spend, we're highly relevant to them.
I know a lot of hard work, Mike, by you and the team, and much appreciated. Tony, do you want to talk about SignalWire and sort of on the business side, what you guys are seeing?
And please also, or Evan or Sean, introduce Cantina. What is this? What is WebRTC? Why is this better than Zoom?
Well, we won't go into getting why we're better in Zoom or not, because that's other people's decision to make. But we kind of have a completely different thing in mind, which is to make a kind of somewhere that you can hang out, not necessarily just kind of a sterile environment to have a meeting. So there's a big difference in kind of the use cases and the way that you would leverage it. So this is kind of the first public beta of our software that allows you to use a web browser as a client to get into a video conference that has multiple rooms in it that you can wander. If you have like an office with a lot of different stuff going on like we do, we use it internally so that we can switch around. Everybody has their own room for different topics, so it's similar to Slack, only for video. And yeah, we're just it was born out of necessity from our own remote work habits that we had developed, because we're very unique in the fact that we don't work remote. We didn't start doing it because of COVID. We just always work remote. So it's kind of like the perfect storm for us to kind of get our stuff going.
And Tony, can you talk a little bit about how business is for you guys? And then I know on Cantina, we've loved using it for our business. It's kind of like an always on, so you don't have that sort of schedule of a Zoom and that whole process. That you can just have it open and running all day long and just kind of pop in from room to room and chat with folks. So I encourage you guys to try it out with your own companies and teams, and give the SignalWire team some feedback. But Tony, your thoughts on sort of the business environment SignalWire is facing?
So it's kind of special because there's a overwhelming need for video stuff now. So it kind of increased the amount of attention that we're getting for it. Our business is software-defined telecom, so we cover all aspects. So doing video conferencing is one thing, but we also do just straight up telephone traffic and SMS and application hosting. So I would say, like, during this whole thing, it's not been the best. We didn't get any massive losses. We did have a few customers that are in the service businesses that took a little bit of a break because they weren't getting any customers. But for the most part, we're right on track still. I'd say that there might be some apprehension on anyone that's going to be doing anything new right now. So we might have a really big surge if we have developers that are starting to build stuff. So it's harder to predict, but I think we have some who are kind of stuck in their house anyway and are working on some stuff. But I think some larger companies are already kind of getting to the next stage where they think they're going to.
Let me also add just a fine point on what Tony's saying. One of the things that makes Cantina really special is that it runs in a browser. So the only thing you need to access Cantina is the internet and a browser on any device, whether it's Apple or Android or a tablet or a phone or a refrigerator or your car, which is profoundly different, right? So it's true telecommunications in the cloud in a heterogeneously supported way. And that's one of the things that's magical about WebRTC. It's a quick question for Evan. Is Evan still on?
Yes, I'm here.
Evan, just a quick question. As the CTO of SignalWire, is COVID-19 transferable over the internet? Is that something I should worry about?
No one has. I've not seen any studies that definitively prove that it is not transmissible. So, I mean, always be cautious.
Okay,
well, that's why you're wearing your mask. Maybe Adrian can opine on that question.
Get your masks on, guys, just in case.
Just in
Okay.
case.
Hey,
Right,
so
exactly. Always be careful.
okay, so my Harvard Business School class has been having all these meetings and stuff, and we've been hating Zoom. So I don't know how to set up SignalWire, but Luis, maybe you can teach me, because we have about 100 of us now that get together, and we need these breakout rooms. I've decided we should pick up politics, and so I don't know how to do that, but I will sign us up tomorrow, and you'll get 100 HBS people at least. So
That's awesome.
Great.
And I know all of us would be happy to help anybody get on Cantina.
Hey, hold on. Before we do that, Renee, how much do you think we could charge each one of those Harvard MBAs?
Luis, I think you're missing the opportunity, buddy. You got
they're Harvard
100
MBAs. Come on, Harvard MBAs can pay for a world-class, better than Zoom alternative.
Dude,
How about they
what
try
you're
it out
missing is the 100 companies that they work for and what we get to
All right.
charge
Well,
them.
look, it's not my business, Tony. It's your company. You decide whether you want to give Harvard MBAs the product away for free. Personally, I would charge
No,
$1,000 a month.
but Luis, you got to think about this. Like, it's not just my section, because we're doing it with even the spouses. That's how we got to 100. But like, pretty much every section I know are doing these calls right now, and we're all veering out into kind of what I was just talking about, and where people are very frustrated with Zoom. So we're actually having chats about how we're hating the site. So we should get
Renee,
SignalWire out to these guys.
my wife works for a company that's also remote. She's on Zoom calls about 10 hours a day, and I hear maybe 3 or 4 conversations around how much people hate Zoom a day. So with all of this happening, SignalWire, like all of the other companies in the portfolio, is something we're excited about. Right, we are delighted to be an early shareholder in SignalWire, and we're delighted that all of you are part of our community. By being part of this community, all of you are shareholders in SignalWire.
Hey guys, I'm gonna, in the spirit of keeping us on time, I'm gonna just jump through a couple last thoughts before we wrap up today. Appreciate the conversation. I know it's been, a little bit more of a downer than normal, but as we did last November, want to kind of give everyone both the context and the heads up to be prepared for what's ahead of us. Our first half, just for our business, just to give you a sense, on a portfolio dollar weighted, so the dollars invested, so it was a great segue from Luis, is performing, and just being honest, having gone through, multiple recessions in our career, a lot better than I would have expected. Growing, this year over last year around 41%, gross margin 70%, and cash runway. That's probably the thing that makes me the most nervous on this chart, across the portfolio, of about 12 months. So if I could encourage you guys to get 18 months, however you can do it, I think that's sort of the one big takeaway to ask of you today. Our capital efficiency of growth is a little bit below our target, but I think that has a lot to do with sort of the environment we're in. Some quick updates for you guys on the first half. There was up round financings at SignalWire, Game Club, Carrilla, Senso, and Gentrio. Portfolio numbers we had talked about. There's been inbound M&A interest on 3 of the companies, so this is all in the positive. Multiple continued commitments from gurus and LPs, but mostly high net worth folks to the fund. And I got one person I probably need to get on to mute. Sorry about that. Who thinks they're on mute, but they're not.
Who's eating chips into the
All right, hopefully that works. So what are some of the challenges that are in front of us? The macro environment we talked about for sure. I think that translates into some risks on the financing side for companies. So that's another reason not to put yourself in a position of needing cash in the next 18 months if you can avoid it. And just to give you a sense, one of the big sources for commitments and to venture funds is universities and their endowments, and they pretty much shut down in terms of making new fund commitments because they're going to need to take money out of their endowments to fund some pretty massive holes. University of Michigan, University of Chicago are estimating $500 million to $1 billion each out of their endowments this fall just to operate. And so the assumption that the taps turn on right away, I think is an assumption you got to be really careful about. Just kind of wrap it up. What's our 18-month plan, as a firm? So we're focused on supporting our portfolio companies. That is our mission. We love to do it. It's our drive. Please, if you're not already reaching out to us on things you need, we try to reach out to you a lot, but if there are things you need, let us know. We've also refined our business focus given the environment. So we're just doing North America, not touching Europe. We've aligned the team, capital structure, and sector focus to make sure that we're able to persevere on behalf of everyone. We're also aligned on a pretty pragmatic worst case scenario, along the lines we've talked about in terms of what it's going to take. But we're also really, have a lot of conviction that we will return top decile performance as we did in 2002 and 2008, and some painful scars through those cycles. And the other thing that we want to continue to do is engage the broader community and the gurus here to help our companies grow faster without having to use dollars, and that helps us all win. We are trying our best to over communicate. Thanks to Meryl helping us make that happen, stay engaged and adapt. And then I guess the other thing that I want to leave you guys with is the inspiration that you give to us. So, you got that centerpiece for Renee. She's got a different challenge, growing 143% week over week. That's exciting. But a lot of us are dealing with different, cross currents, and what Michael Sijens and the team at CareerList have done with reboot work, the Harper Wild team leaning in on Black Lives Matter, both as a point of principle, but also business acceleration, exceeded their Q2 goals by leaning into that. The EMI work that Mike Fordyce and David Stoss have done. I look at that data every week. So if you don't look at it, have a look at it. It gives you great insights as to sort of some leading indicators we're thinking about. And Dan Sherman and team at Game Club just launched on Android and persevered through some tough challenges with developers that were distributed and got that done, and some awesome results for them this week. Cantina, use it, try it, give some feedback. As Bonnie Henry, one of my favorite inspirations of the COVID time, please act like you're chopping jalapenos. It's important to do. We are at the halfway point, not the end, not 2/3 of the way. So look after your family, look after each other as you continue to do that. Look after yourselves. I know this can really kind of wear down all of us, and the last thing anyone wants to hear is we're only at the halfway point. Message from us, please find 18 months of cash runway like you are in the middle of a pandemic and the worst economic reset of our lives, because we are. But also stay calm, stay safe, look after your family, stay kind, stay awesome. That's our message from you guys. Thank you for everything you're doing. I love how our communities come together in multiple ways. And I'm happy to stay on and chat longer, but for those that need to drop off, thanks for the time. We will have a midsummer sync up